The Vought F-8 Crusader, originally F-8U, was a single-engine, supersonic, carrier-based air superiority jet aircraft built by Vought for the United States Navy and Marine Corps, replacing the Vought F-7U Cutlass, and for the French Navy. The first F-8 prototype was ready for flight in February 1955. The F-8 served principally in the Vietnam War. The Crusader was the last American fighter with guns as the primary weapon, earning it the title the last of the gunfighters. The RF-8 Crusader was a photo reconnaissance development and operated longer in U.S. service than any of the fighter versions. RF-8S played a crucial role in the Cuban Missile Crisis, providing essential low-level photographs impossible to acquire by other means. U.S. Naval Reserve units continued to operate the RF-8 until 1987. Design and development. In September 1952, the United States Navy announced a requirement for a new fighter. It was to have a top speed of Mach 1.2 at 30,000 feet, 9,144.0 m, with a climb rate of 25,000 feet/min, 127.0 m/s, and a landing speed of no more than 100 miles per hour, 160 kilometers per hour. Korean War experience had demonstrated that 0.50-inch, 12.7 mm, machine guns were no longer sufficient, and as the result the new fighter was to carry a 20 mm, 0.79-in, cannon. In response, the Vought team led by John Russell Clark, created the V-383. Unusual for a fighter, the aircraft had a high-mounted wing which necessitated the use of a fuselage-mounted short and light landing gear. The Crusader was powered by a Pratt & Whitney J57 turbojet engine. The engine was equipped with an afterburner that, unlike on later engines, was either fully lit, or off, i.e. it did not have zones. The engine produced 18,000 pounds of thrust at full power, enough to allow the F-8 to climb straight up in clean configuration. The Crusader was the first jet fighter in U.S. service to reach 1,000 miles per hour. U.S. Navy pilot R.W. Windsor reached 1,015 miles per hour on a flight in 1956. The most innovative aspect of the design was the variable incidence wing, which pivoted by 7 degrees out of the fuselage on takeoff and landing, not to be confused with variable sweep wing. This allowed a greater angle of attack, increasing lift without compromising forward visibility. This innovation helped the F-8's development team win the Collier Trophy in 1956. Simultaneously, the lift was augmented by leading-edge slats drooping by 25 degrees and inboard flaps extending to 30 degrees. The rest of the aircraft took advantage of contemporary aerodynamic innovations with area-ruled fuselage, all-moving stabilators, dog-tooth notching at the wing folds for improved yaw stability, and liberal use of titanium in the airframe. The armament, as specified by the Navy, consisted primarily of 4 20 mm, .79-in, autocannon. The Crusader happened to be the last U.S. fighter designed with guns as its primary weapon. They were supplemented with a retractable tray with 32 unguided Mk4/Mk40 folding fin aerial rocket, Mighty Mouse FFARs, and cheek pylons for 2 guided AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missiles. Vought also presented a tactical reconnaissance version of the aircraft called the V-392. Major competition came from the Grumman F-11 Tiger, the upgraded twin-engine McDonnell F-3H Demon, which would eventually become the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II, and lastly, the North American F-100 Super Sabre, hastily adapted to carrier use and dubbed the Super Fury. In May 1953, the Vought design was declared a winner, and in June, Vought received an order for 3 F-8U-1 prototypes. After adoption of the Unified Designation System in September 1962, the F-8U became the F-8. The first prototype flew on March 25, 1955 with John Conrad at the controls. The aircraft exceeded the speed of sound during its maiden flight. The development was so trouble-free that the second prototype, along with the first production F-8U-1, flew on the same day, September 30, 1955. On April 4, 1956, the F-8U-1 performed its first catapult launch from Forrestal. Crusader 3. In parallel with the F-8U-1S and -2s, the Crusader design team was also working on a larger aircraft with ever greater performance, internally designated as the V-401. Although the Vought F-8U-3 Crusader 3 was externally similar to the Crusader and sharing with it such design elements as the variable incidence wing, the new fighter was larger and shared few components. Operational history. Prototype XF-8U-1S were evaluated by VX-3 beginning in late 1956, with few problems noted. Weapons development was conducted at Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake, and a China Lake F-8U-1 set a U.S. national speed record in August 1956. Commander Duke Windsor broke and set a new level flight speed record of 1015.428 miles per hour, 1634.173 kilometers per hour, on August 21, 1956, beating the previous record of 822 miles per hour, 1,323 km per hour, set by a U.S. Air Force F-100. It did not break the world speed record of 1,132 miles per hour, 1,822 km per hour, set by the British ferry Delta II, on March 10, 1956. An early F-8U-1 was modified as a photo reconnaissance aircraft, becoming the first F-8U-1P. Subsequently, the RF-8A was equipped with cameras rather than guns and missiles. On July 16, 1957, Major John H. Glenn Jr., USMC, completed the first supersonic transcontinental flight in a F-8U-1P, flying from NAS Los Alamitos, California, to Floyd Bennett Field, New York, in 3 hours, 23 minutes, and 8.3 seconds. First fleet operators. VX-3 was one of the first units to receive the F-8U-1 in December 1956, and was the first to operate the type in April 1957, from USS Franklin D. Roosevelt. VX-3 was the first unit to qualify for carrier operations, but several aircraft were lost in accidents, several of them fatal to their pilots. The first fleet squadron to fly the Crusader was VF-32 at NAS Cecil Field, Florida, in 1957, which deployed to the Mediterranean late that year on Saratoga. VF-32 renamed the squadron the Swordsman in keeping with the Crusader theme. The Pacific Fleet received the first Crusaders at NAS Moffett Field in Northern California, and the VF-154 Grand Slammers, named in honor of the new 1,000 mph jets and subsequently renamed the Black Knights, began their F-8 operations. Later in 1957, in San Diego, VMF-122 accepted the first Marine Corps Crusaders. In 1962, the Defense Department standardized military aircraft designations generally along Air Force lines. Consequently, the F-8U became the F-8, with the original F-8U-1 redesignated F-8A. Fleet service. The Crusader became a day fighter operating off the aircraft carriers. At the time, U.S. Navy carrier air wings had gone through a series of day and night fighter aircraft due to rapid advances in engines and avionics. Some squadrons operated aircraft for very short periods before being equipped with a newer, higher performance aircraft. The Crusader was the first post-Korean War aircraft to have a relatively long tenure with the fleet, and like the U.S. Air Force Republic F-105 Thunder Chief, a contemporary design, might have stayed in service longer if not for the Vietnam War and corresponding attrition from combat and operational losses. Cuban Missile Crisis. The unarmed RF-8A proved good at getting low-altitude detailed photographs, leading to carrier deployments as detachments from the Navy's VFP-62 and VFP-63 squadrons and the Marines' VMCJ-2. Beginning on October 23, 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, RF-8s flew extremely hazardous low-level photo reconnaissance missions over Cuba, the F-8's first true operational flights. 2 ship flights of RF-8s left Key West twice each day, to fly over Cuba at low level, then return to Jacksonville, where the film was offloaded and developed, to be rushed north to the Pentagon. These flights confirmed that the Soviet Union was setting up IRBMs in Cuba. The RF-8s also monitored the withdrawal of the Soviet missiles. After each overflight, the aircraft was given a stencil of a dead chicken, The overflights went on for about 6 weeks and returned a total of 160,000 images. The pilots who flew the missions received distinguished flying crosses, while VFP-62 and VMCJ-2 received the prestigious U.S. Navy Unit Commendation. Mishap rate. The Crusader was not an easy aircraft to fly, and was often unforgiving in carrier landings, where it suffered from poor recovery from high sink rates, and the poorly designed, castering nose undercarriage made it hard to steer on the deck. Safe landings required the carriers to steam at full speed to lower the relative landing speed for Crusader pilots. The stacks of the oil-burning carriers on which the Crusader served belched thick black smoke, sometimes obscuring the flight deck, forcing the Crusader's pilot to rely on the landing signal officer's radioed instructions. It earned a reputation as an ensign eliminator during its early service introduction. The nozzle and air intake were so low when the aircraft was on the ground or the flight deck that the crews called the aircraft the Gator. Not surprisingly, the Crusader's mishap rate was relatively high compared to its contemporaries, the Douglas A-4 Skyhawk and the F-4 Phantom II. However, the aircraft did possess some amazing capabilities, as proved when several Crusader pilots took off with the wings folded. One of these episodes took place on August 23, 1960. A Crusader with the wings folded took off from Napoli Capodichino in full afterburner, climbed to 5,000 feet, 1,500 m, and then returned to land successfully. The pilot, absent-minded but evidently a good stick man, complained that the control forces were higher than normal. The Crusader was capable of flying in this state, though the pilot would be required to reduce aircraft weight by ejecting stores and fuel before landing. In all, 1,261 Crusaders were built. By the time it was withdrawn from the fleet, 1,106 had been involved in mishaps. Only a handful of them were lost to enemy fire in Vietnam. Vietnam War. When conflict erupted in the skies over North Vietnam, it was U.S. Navy Crusaders from USS Hancock that first tangled with Vietnam People's Air Force, the North Vietnamese Air Force, MiG-17s, on April 3, 1965. The MiGs claimed the downing of a Crusader. An LT-FAM NGOC Lands gun camera revealed that his cannons had set an F-8 ablaze, but Lieutenant Commander Spence Thomas had managed to land his damaged Crusader at Da Nang Air Base, the remaining F-8s returning safely to their carrier. At the time, the Crusader was the best dogfighter the United States had against the nimble North Vietnamese MiGs. The U.S. Navy had evolved its night fighter role in the air wing to an all-weather interceptor, the F-4 Phantom II, equipped to engage incoming bombers at long range with missiles such as AIM-7 Sparrow as their sole air-to-air weapons, and maneuverability was not emphasized in their design. Some experts believed that the era of the dogfight was over as air-to-air missiles would knock down adversaries well before they could get close enough to engage in dogfighting. As aerial combat ensued over North Vietnam from 1965 to 1968, it became apparent that the dogfight was not over and the F-8 Crusader and a community trained to prevail in air-to-air combat was a key ingredient to success. The Crusader also became a bomb truck in war, with both ship-based U.S. Navy units and land-based U.S. Marine Corps squadrons attacking Communist forces in both North and South Vietnam. USMC Crusaders flew only in the South, while U.S. Navy Crusaders flew only from the small Essex-class carriers. Marine Crusaders also operated in close air support missions. Despite the last gunfighter moniker, the F-8s achieved only 4 victories with their cannon. The remainder were accomplished with AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles, partly due to the propensity of the 20 mm .79 in Colt Mk-12 cannon's feeding mechanism to jam under G-loading during high-speed dogfighting maneuvers. Between June and July 1966, during 12 engagements over North Vietnam, Crusaders claimed 4 MiG-17s for 2 losses. The Crusader would claim the best kill ratio of any American type in the Vietnam War, 19:3. Of the 19 aircraft claimed during aerial combat, 16 were MiG-17s and 3 were MiG-21s. U.S. records only indicate 3 F-8s lost in aerial combat, all to MiG-17 cannon fire in 1966, but the VPAF claimed 11 F-8s were shot down by MiGs. A total of 170 F-8 Crusaders would be lost to all causes, mostly ground fire and accidents during the war. Twilight service with U.S. Navy. LTV built and delivered the 1,219th, and last, U.S. Navy Crusader to VF-124 at NAS Miramar on September 3, 1964. The last active-duty Navy Crusader fighter variants were retired from VF-191 and VF-194 aboard Oriskany in 1976 after almost 2 decades of service, setting a first for a Navy fighter. The photo reconnaissance variant continued to serve in the active-duty Navy for yet another 11 years, with VF-P-63 flying RF-8GS up to 1982, and with the Naval Reserve flying their RF-8GS in 2 squadrons, VF-P-206 and VF-P-306, at Naval Air Facility Washington/Andrews AFB until the disestablishment of VF-P-306 in 1984 and VF-P-206 on March 29, 1987, when the last operational Crusader was turned over to the National Air and Space Museum. The F-8 Crusader is the only aircraft to have used the AIM-9C, which is a radar-guided variant of the Sidewinder. When the Crusader retired, these missiles were converted to the AGM-122 sidearm anti-radiation missiles used by United States attack helicopters to knock out enemy radars. NASA. Several modified F-8s were used by NASA in the early 1970s, proving the viability of both digital fly-by-wire and supercritical wings. French Navy. When the French Navy's air arm, the Aéronaval, required a carrier-based fighter in the early 1960s to serve aboard the new carriers Clemenceau and Foch, the F-4 Phantom, then entering service with the United States Navy, proved to be too large for the small French ships. Following carrier trials aboard Clemenceau on March 16, 1962, by 2 VF-32 F-8s from the American carrier Saratoga, the Crusader was chosen and 42 F-8s were ordered, the last Crusaders produced. The French Crusaders were based on the F-8E, but were modified in order to allow operations from the small French carriers, with the maximum angle of incidence of the aircraft's wing increased from 5 to 7 degrees and blown flaps fitted. The aircraft's weapon system was modified to carry 2 French Matra R.530 radar or infrared missiles as an alternative to Sidewinders, although the ability to carry the American missile was retained. Deliveries of the new aircraft, dubbed the F-8E, FN, started in October 1964 and continued until February 1965, with the Aeronaval's first squadron, Flotille 12F, reactivated on October 1, 1964. To replace the old Corsairs, Flotille 14F received its Crusaders on March 1, 1965. In October 1974, on Clemenceau, and June 1977, on Foch, Crusaders from 14F Squadron participated in the Saphir missions over Djibouti. On May 7, 1977, 2 Crusaders went separately on patrol against supposedly French Air Force, 411th Jura Squadron, F-100 Super Sabres stationed at Djibouti. The leader intercepted 2 fighters and engaged a dogfight, supposed to be a training exercise, but quickly called his wingman for help as he had actually engaged 2 Yemeni Mikoyan Gurovich MiG-21s. The 2 French fighters switched their master armament to on, but, ultimately, everyone returned to their bases. This was the only combat interception by French Crusaders. The Aeronaval Crusaders flew combat missions over Lebanon in 1983, escorting Dassault Brigade Super-Étendard strike aircraft. In October 1984, France sent Foch for Operation Mermilon off the coast of Libya, intended to calm Colonel Gaddafi down, with 12F Squadron. The escalation of the situation in the Persian Gulf, due to the Iran-Iraq conflict, triggered the deployment of Clemenceau Task Force and its air wing, including 12F Squadron. 1993 saw the beginning of the missions over ex-Yugoslavia. Crusaders were launched from both carriers cruising in the Adriatic Sea. These missions ceased in June 1999 with Operation Trident over Kosovo. The French Crusaders were subject to a series of modifications throughout their life, being fitted with new F-8J type wings in 1969 and having modified afterburners fitted in 1979. Armament was enhanced by the addition of R-550 Magic infrared guided missiles in 1973, with the improved, all-aspect Magic II fitted from 1988. The obsolete R.530 was withdrawn from use in 1989, leaving the Crusaders without a radar-guided missile. In 1989, when it was realized that the Crusader would not be replaced for several years, it was decided to refurbish the Crusaders to extend their operating life. Each aircraft was rewired and had its hydraulic system refurbished, while the airframe was strengthened to extend fatigue life. Avionics were improved, with a modified navigation suite and a new radar warning receiver. The 17 refurbished aircraft were redesignated as F-8P, P used for prolong extended and not to be confused with the Philippine F-8P. Although the French Navy participated in combat operations in 1991 during Operation Desert Storm and over Kosovo in 1999, the Crusaders stayed behind and were eventually replaced by the Rafale M in 2000 as the last of the breed in military service. Philippine Air Force. In late 1977, the Philippine government purchased 35 second-hand U.S. Navy F-8HS that were stored at Davis-Monthan AFB in Arizona. 25 of them were refurbished by Vought and the remaining 10 were used for spare parts. As part of the deal, the U.S. would train Philippine pilots in using the TF-8A. They were mostly used for intercepting Soviet bombers. The F-8S were grounded in 1988 and were finally withdrawn from service in 1991 after they were badly damaged by the Mount Pinatubo eruption, and have since been offered for sale as scrap. Variants: XF-8U1, XF-8A, V-383, the two original unarmed prototypes. F-8U1, F-8A, first production version, J57P12 engine replaced with more powerful J57P4A starting with 31st production aircraft, 318 built. YF-8U1, YF-8A, one F-8U1 fighter used for development testing. YF-8U1E, YF-8B, one F-8U1 converted to serve as an F-8U1E prototype. F-8U1E, F-8B, added a limited all-weather capability thanks to the APS-67 radar. The unguided rocket tray was sealed shut because it was never used operationally. First flight, September 3, 1958, 130 built. XF-8U1T1 XF-8U2NE used for evaluation as a two-seat trainer. F-8U1T, TF-8A, V408, two-seat trainer version based on F-8U2NE. Fuselage stretched 2 feet, 0.61 m, internal armament reduced to 2 cannon, J57P20 engine, first flight February 6, 1962. The Royal Navy was initially interested in the Rolls-Royce Spey-powered version of TF-8A but chose the Phantom II instead. Only one TF-8A was built, although several retired F-8As were converted to similar two-seat trainers. YF-8U2, YF-8C, two F-8U1S used for flight testing the J57P16 turbojet engine. F-8U2, F-8C, J57P16 engine with 16,900 lbf, 75 knots, of afterburning thrust, ventral fins added under the rear fuselage in an attempt to rectify yaw instability, Y-shaped cheek pylons allowing two Sidewinder missiles on each side of the fuselage, and /APQ-83 radar retrofitted during later upgrades. First flight, August 20, 1957, 187 built. This variant was sometimes referred to as Crusader II. F-8U2N, F-8D, all-weather version, unguided rocket pack replaced with an additional fuel tank, J57P20 engine with 18,000 lbf, 80 knots, of afterburning thrust, landing system which automatically maintained present airspeed during approach, incorporation of APQ-83 radar. First flight, February 16, 1960, 152 built. YF-8U2N, YF-8D, one aircraft used in the development of the F-8U2N. Why F8U2NE1 F8U1 converted to serve as an F8U2NE prototype. F8U2NE, F8E, J57P20A engine, and /APQ94 radar in a larger nose cone, dorsal hump between the wings containing electronics for the AGM-12 bullpup missile, payload increased to 5,000 pounds, 2,270 kilograms, Martin Baker ejection seat, and /APQ94 radar replaced and /APQ83 radar in earlier F8D. IRST sensor blister, round ball, was added in front of the canopy. First flight, June 30, 1961, 286 built. F8E, FN, Air Superiority Fighter version for the French Navy, significantly increased wing lift due to greater slat and flap deflection and the addition of a boundary layer control system, enlarged stabilators, incorporated an /APQ104 radar, an upgraded version of an /APQ94. A total of 42 built. F8H upgraded F8D with strengthened airframe and landing gear, with an /APQ84 radar. A total of 89 rebuilt. F8J upgraded F8E, similar to F8D but with wing modifications and BLC like on F8E, FN, wet pylons for external fuel tanks, J57P20A engine, with an /APQ124 radar. A total of 136 rebuilt. F8K upgraded F8C with bullpup capability and J57P20A engines, with an /APQ125 radar. A total of 87 rebuilt. F8L F8B upgraded with underwing hardpoints, with an /APQ149 radar. A total of 61 rebuilt. F8P17 F8E, FN, of the aeronaval underwent a significant overhaul at the end of the 1980s to stretch their service life another 10 years. They were retired in 1999. F8U1D, DF8A, several retired F8A modified to controller aircraft for testing of the SSMN-8 Regulus cruise missile. DF8A was also modified as drone, F9 Cougar, control which were used extensively by VC-8, NS Roosevelt RDS, PR, Atlantic Fleet Missile Range. DF-8F retired F-8A modified as controller aircraft for testing of missiles including at the USN facility at China Lake. F-8U-1KU, QF-8A, retired F-8A modified into remote-controlled target drones. YF-8U-1P, YRF-8A, prototypes used in the development of the F-8U-1P photo reconnaissance aircraft V-392. F-8U-1P, RF-8A, unarmed photo reconnaissance version of F-8U-1E, 144 built. RF-8G modernized RF-8As. LTV V-100 revised low-cost development based on the earlier F-8 variants, created in 1970 to compete against the F-4E Phantom II, Lockheed CL-1200, and F-5-21 in a tender for U.S. Military Assistance Program, MAP, funding. The unsuccessful design was ultimately only a paper exercise. XF-8U-3 Crusader 3, V401, new design loosely based on the earlier F-8 variants, created to compete against the F-4 Phantom II, J75P5A engine with 29,500 lbf, 131 knots, of afterburning thrust, first flight, June 2, 1958, attained Mach 2.39 in test flights, cancelled after 5 aircraft were constructed because the Phantom II won the Navy contract. Operators: France, French Navy, Aeronaval, Philippines, Philippine Air Force, United States, United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, NASA. Aircraft on display: France, F8E, FN. 151,732, French Navy Side No. 1, Musée des Avions de Chasse, Bonn. 151,750, French Navy Side No. 19, Musée des Ailes Anciennes, Toulouse. F8P. 151,733, French Navy Side No. 3, Lon Bayou Airport, Le Manegouin. 151,735, French Navy Side No. 4, Musée Européen de l'Aviation de Chasse, Montélimar-Ancona. 151,738, French Navy Side No. 7, Aeronaval Base, Landivisiau. 151,741, French Navy Side No. 10, Musée de l'Espace, the Air and Space Museum, Paris, France. 151,742, French Navy Side No. 11, Musée de l'Aéronautique Naval, Roquefort. 151,754, French Navy Side No. 23, Aeronaval Base, Landivisiau. 151,760, French Navy Side No. 29, Aeronaval Base, Landivisiau. 151,767, French Navy Side No. 36, Musée des Avions de Chasse, Beaune. 151,768, French Navy Side No. 37, Airport in Cuers. 151,770, French Navy Side No. 39, Aeronaval Base, Landivisiau. Philippines. F8H. 147,056 Philippine Air Force Aerospace Museum, Villamar Air Base, Manila. 147,060, Basa Air Base, Florida Blanca, Pampanga. 148,661 Clark Air Base, Angeles. 148,696, Fort del Pilar, Baguio City. United States. XF8U1, XF8A. 138,899 Museum of Flight in Seattle, Washington. XF8U2, XF8B. 140,448 McAuliffe Shepard Discovery Center in Concord, New Hampshire. F8U1, F8A. 141,351 NAS Jacksonville Heritage Park, Naval Air Station Jacksonville, Florida, relocated from former NAS Cecil Field. 141,353 Edwards AFB, California. 143,703 USS Hornet Museum, former Naval Air Station Alameda, Alameda, California. 143,755 Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, California. 143,806 Wings of Freedom Aviation Museum, former Naval Air Station Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. 144,427 Pima Air and Space Museum adjacent to Davis-Monthan AFB in Tucson, Arizona. 145,336 Planes of Fame at Chino, California. 145,347 National Naval Aviation Museum at Naval Air Station Pensacola, Florida. 145,349 Pueblo Weisbrod Aircraft Museum, Pueblo, Colorado. 145,397 Naval Air Engineering Station Lakehurst, New Jersey. F8U2, F8C. 145,546 Edwards AFB, California. 146,963 Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort, South Carolina. 146,973 Marine Corps Air Station Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. 147,034, Nose Section Only, USS Hornet Museum, former NAS Alameda, California. 149,150 NAS Oceana Aviation Heritage Park, Naval Air Station Oceana, Virginia. Uno Unknown NAD Park, Bremerton, Washington. F8U2N, F8D. 148,693 Mid-America Air Museum in Liberal, Kansas. F8U2NE, F8E. 150,920 Flying Leatherneck Aviation Museum at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, California. F8U1P, RF8G. 144,617 Flying Leatherneck Aviation Museum at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, California. 144,618 Celebrity Row, Davis Monthan AFB, Northside, Tucson, Arizona. 145,607 Castle Air Museum, formerly Castle AFB, Atwater, California. 145,608, Nose Section Only, Pacific Coast Air Museum, Santa Rosa, California. 145,609 National Museum of Naval Aviation, Naval Air Station Pensacola, Pensacola, Florida. 145,645 USS Alabama Battleship Memorial Park, Mobile, Alabama. 146,860 Smithsonian Institution's National Air and Space Museum Udvar-Hazy Center in Chantilly, Virginia, adjacent to Dulles International Airport. 146,858 in storage at Flying Leatherneck Aviation Museum at Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, California. 146,882 Frontiers of Flight Museum in Dallas, Texas. 146,898 Fort Worth Aviation Museum in Fort Worth, Texas. F8H. 147,909 Nadsor Optimist Park, Kitsap Lake, Bremerton, Washington, about 1 mile away from Naval Hospital Bremerton. Aircraft is on loan from the National Naval Aviation Museum, Pensacola, Florida. F8J. 150,904 Air Zoo in Kalamazoo, Michigan. F8U2, F8K. 145,550 USS Intrepid Museum in New York City, New York. 146,931 Estrella Warbids Museum in Paso Robles, California. 146,939 Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum aboard ex-USS Yorktown, CV-10, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. 146,983 Marine Corps Air Station Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. 146,985 Valiant Air Command Warbird Museum at Space Coast Regional Airport in Titusville, Florida. 146,995 Pacific Coast Air Museum, adjacent to the Sonoma County Airport in Santa Rosa, California. 147,030 USS Midway Museum in San Diego, California. F8L. 145,449 Naval Air Station Fallon, Fallon, Nevada. Specifications, F8E. General characteristics. Crew, 1. Payload, 5,000 pounds, 2,300 kilograms, of weapons. Length, 54 feet 3 in, 16.53 m. Wingspan, 35 feet 8 in, 10.87 m. Height, 15 feet 9 in, 4.80 m. Wing area, 375 feet superscript 2, 34.8 square meters. Airfoil, NACA 65A006 mod root, NACA 65A005 mod tip. Aspect ratio, 3.4. Empty weight, 17,541 pounds, 7,956 kilograms. Loaded weight, 29,000 pounds, 13,000 kilograms. Max takeoff weight, 34,000 pounds, 15,000 kilograms. Zero lift drag coefficient, 0.0133. Drag area, 5.0 feet superscript 2, 0.46 square meters. Fuel capacity, 1,325 US gal, 5,020 L. Power plant, 1 times Pratt & Whitney J57P20A afterburning turbojet. Dry thrust, 10,700 lbf, 47.6 knots. Thrust with afterburner, 18,000 lbf, 80.1 knots. Performance. Maximum speed, Mach 1.86, 1,225 miles per hour, 1,975 kilometers per hour, at 36,000 feet, 11,000 m. Cruise speed, 495 knots, 570 miles per hour, 917 kilometers per hour. Combat radius, 450 miles, 730 kilometers. Ferry range, 1,735 miles, 2,792 kilometers, with external fuel. Service ceiling, 58,000 feet, 17,700 m. Rate of climb, 19,000 feet min, 96.52 m/s. Wing loading, 77.3 lb/foot superscript 2, 377.6 kg/m superscript 2. Thrust/weight, 0.62. Lift to drag ratio, 12.8. Armament. Guns, 4 x 20 mm, 0.79 in, Colt Mk12 cannons in lower fuselage, 125 RPG. Hardpoints, 2 x side fuselage mounted Y pylons, for mounting AIM-9 sidewinders and Zuni rockets, and 2 x underwing pylon stations with a capacity of 4,000 pounds, 2,000 kilograms, and provisions to carry combinations of rockets, 2 x Lau-10 rocket pods, each with 4 x 5-inch, 127 mm, Zuni rockets. Missiles. 4 x AIM-9 Sidewinder or Matram Magic, French Navy only, air-to-air missiles. 2 x AGM-12 Bullpup air-to-surface missiles. Bombs. 12 x 250 pounds, 113 kilograms, Mark 81 bombs or 8 x 500 pounds, 227 kilograms, Mark 82 bombs or 4 x 1000 pounds, 454 kilograms, Mark 83 bombs or 2 x 2000 pounds, 907 kilograms, Mark 84 bombs. Avionics. Magnavox/APQ-84 Oran/APQ-94 Fire Control Radar. Roll Fighter Aircraft. National origin United States. Manufacturer Vought. First flight March 25, 1955. Introduction March 1957. Retired 1976, Fighter, U.S. Navy. March 29, 1987, Photo Reconnaissance, U.S. Naval Reserve. 1991, Philippines. December 19, 1999, Fighter, France. Status retired completely in 2000. Primary users United States Navy, United States Marine Corps, French Navy, Philippine Air Force. Number built 1219. Developed into Vought XF8U3 Crusader 3. LTVA 7 Corsair 2.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.